Ready for this?
Not really.
No, what are you not ready?
Oh, were you gonna say, are you ready for something you were gonna tell me or the show?
No, I was asked if you were ready for
Oh,
this, as in the show.
yeah. I mean, sure. Let's make it happen. Yes,
Okay.
I am. I'm
All
now
right.
ready.
Good. Good. Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter/X at Real Bird Lawyer, where I've just been muting replies to my tweets because they're making Patriots fans and Ravens fans and Dolphins fans and Bengals fans and pretty much every fan of an NFL team that isn't the Chiefs very angry right now. Also on Blue Sky at Bird Law Expert, where I am not skying currently. But here with me, as always, my co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit on Twitter/X on Blue Sky at Taylor and Wit. What's going on, bud?
Oh, just also muting people. I've been heavily applying that button especially this last week. The haters are so furious.
You know, what I've learned, and this is probably one of my, keystone moments as an X/Twitter user was when I realized how angry the mute button would make people. And specifically,
Yeah,
when I tell people that I'm going to mute them and then mute them. Now, you can't do that with the
man,
block button
no,
because if you block somebody, then they may not even see your tweet where you
they
tell
won't.
them I'm blocking you.
Yeah,
Unless they're like right there in the heat of the
yeah.
moment, and they're literally looking at the notifications as they come in live, they're not even going to see it. But if you mute them, they will definitely see that you told them that you put them on mute and they will
Hmm.
be absolutely livid. I've had people, I'll go back 12 hours later and check. And I've had people, at me like 15 times in a row. And of
Yes,
course, because I've muted them, I'm not replying to it. I'm not looking at it. I'll check it
no,
out later and
they're
I'll enjoy
screaming
it and
into the void.
I'll have a little chuckle about how deeply I was living rent free in their heads. But it's a great time to be a Chiefs fan because we've never known anything different as long as we've been doing this podcast,
No.
previewing an AFC Championship game involving the Kansas City Chiefs. That's going to be great. But before we get to that, we have news. We have a recap of the Chiefs' first road playoff win in the Patrick Mahomes era at Buffalo. And then we will be joined at the end of the show to break down the Chiefs win over the Bills, as well as preview the Chiefs' upcoming matchup against the Ravens by our friend, the Ringers, Rany Jazayerli. But first, we're going to start, as always, with injury news, and I got to say the comparative injury reports here do not favor the Chiefs. Four Chiefs did not practice on Thursday. We're recording this Thursday night. Derek Nottie, who's been working his way back from a long-term injury. Sky Moore, same situation. Isaiah Pacheco has not practiced Wednesday or Thursday with a toe injury, and it seems like he's going to play. Everything I've read suggests that he's going to play. He was at the podium yesterday, which normally guys that are iffy and may not actually play in the game, don't typically get sent up to the podium. And he seemed very upbeat. There doesn't seem like there's any danger, but he has missed 2 days of practice in a row. And the big one, left guard Joe Thuney, he suffered a pec injury on Sunday. By all indications, a long shot to play in this game. But the good news is it's not season ending. There's only one more game left after this one. But if the Chiefs are able to sneak past those Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, it does seem like 2 weeks he might be good to go. He is trying to play on Sunday. Everybody says, he's the toughest guy in the room, and he's gutted it through some really significant injuries before. He had one of those really long active snap streaks that was snapped a year or two ago when he had to come out of the game. But he's a warrior, but doesn't sound like he's going to be able to give it a go on Sunday.
Yeah, he's the highest graded pass blocking guard in football. So certainly when you're going up against Matabuke and all the other stout defensive tackles on the Ravens, he's a guy that, obviously, even though he's going to be missed, the other thing, though, is he's got a competent backup. It's not necessarily a world beater in Nick
Sure,
Allegretti, but
he's not
certainly
the best guard in
he's
the NFL,
started a
but
Super Bowl. I mean, he's certainly, a capable player. And when he stepped in against the Bills, he immediately pancaked a couple guys and looked like he was ready to go. And then he's also, the interior of the line. While we love Tooney and everything that he brings, he's got an all pro center in Creed Humphrey right next to him, and then Trey Smith still in there doing work. So I mean, yes, he will be missed, but this certainly is not like the Bucks game where everything has to shuffle around and be awful and all that. Like Allegretti's going to step in, and my guess is we're not going to see a ton of difference in pass pro.
Yeah, the pass protection obviously is going to be a bigger hit than the run blocking. Nick Allegretti will pancake some dudes in the run game. I mean, you
Yeah,
mentioned it. He did against the Bills in his limited time on Sunday, and we've seen it in the past. I mean, we've seen, a few different stints where Nick Allegretti has had to come in and get extended playing time as a starter. And, he's a guy that, I mean, with Trey Smith on the other side of Creed in the middle of the line, a guy that can maul some people. And, we'll talk about this a little bit with Rany, but, this Baltimore defense is probably more vulnerable on the ground than it is for the air. I mean, they have the best
right.
pass defense in the NFL this year, really a historically great pass defense. And so, I don't mind getting a little bump in the run game. I am a little bit concerned about, especially the Ravens like to do some tricky things up front, stunts and, twists and turns in there. And you'd love to have Joe Tooney out there. If he can't go, though, you could do a lot worse than having Nick Allegretti as the backup. I mentioned on the other side of this, the Ravens are very healthy. Now, listen, that's why you play for the number one seed. That's why you have the best record in the regular season. And only one team gets that, you know. Patrick Mahomes, he had a couple years there where he was able to just cruise in as the second seed and get a playoff bye like Tom Brady did for his entire career. Can't do that anymore. You got to be the best team in your conference to get the bye. And the Ravens are looking really healthy. The only guy who appears to be in any danger of missing the game on Sunday is cornerback Rocky Sin. Mark Andrews, who has not played in a couple of months, he had that horrible ankle injury against the Bengals.
Mm-hmm.
And he is practicing in full. Looks like he's going to be back out there. He was their most dangerous pass catcher, has been for years. So adding, a little bit of firepower, a lot of firepower to a really potent, room of offensive weapons on the Ravens side of the ball. Not an ideal situation for the Chiefs by any means.
No, not really. I think comparing what they're facing this Sunday to what they faced injury wise in the past 2 weeks is obviously night and day. The Dolphins were and the Bills were both incredibly defensively wounded going into that game. And, Chiefs handled business against the Dolphins and squeaked by the Bills. And so now we'll see kind of, a fully functional battle station, as it were, in Baltimore and seeing all their guys out there. Not only Mark Andrews coming back, but Marlon Humphrey's missed some time, all-star cornerback for them, who has limited practice this week and on Wednesday and Thursday, and they do kind of expect that he's probably going to be out there. I mean, that's a great addition to their defense. He's a really good player. And just in general, the one thing that you can say about Baltimore's injury situation is their running backs. Obviously, they lost
J.K. Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins first, and then Keaton Mitchell second in their backfield. But they've got Gus Edwards, they've got Justice Hill, they've got some guys back there that can do some stuff. So yeah, it's going to be a big, big, big challenge. I think the Chiefs know that and expect that, and let's roll.
I think that's going to do it for the news, buddy. Let's get into recapping the first road victory of the Patrick Mahomes era, the road playoff victory, I should say. Chiefs travel to Buffalo, Baltimore, and I hopefully won't make that mistake again. But all these B teams, whatever.
Yeah.
Chiefs go to Buffalo in snowy conditions. They had fans out there shoveling out the stadium. The Chiefs had to go and play in a hostile environment. First road playoff game for Patrick Mahomes, and they prevail, of course, for the third time in the playoffs over the Buffalo Bills. 27-24 is the final. And before we get into the Chiefs system and into our awards, any kind of initial thoughts about this game?
Yeah, stress, really, really stressful. Beating the Dolphins was I thought the worst case scenario. I knew the worst case scenario for the playoffs was to not even get out of there with a playoff win. They took care of business there and they looked pretty good. So going into this Bills game, I felt pretty decent about where the Chiefs were at as a team. There's so much on the line with the Bills, with the matchup, with anytime these big quarterbacks get together, as we'll see again this Sunday. You and I are always so conscious of and focused on these legacy games, these big time, one guy can, really knock the other guy down a peg in
Yeah,
the
one
grand
playoff
scheme
win means a
means
ton.
the world, means the absolute world. And so, I mean, I was watching this game just really aware of how big this game was for both franchises. If not as much for the Chiefs. If the Chiefs lost that game, it wasn't going to be the end of the world. They already kind of had a disappointing season, and to make it to the divisional round and lose on the road to a good team was not much to sweat about. But I knew that, the Chiefs could create a monster in Buffalo if they let the Bills realize or think that they are better than the Chiefs, and then they go on and maybe win a ring. I mean, you can start to see that type of thing snowball. And I was worried about that. So that I was very nervous for this whole game. I was very nervous throughout it, even while the Chiefs were looking okay and winning the game. It just was a very nervy game for me.
As I think I mentioned on the emergency podcast that we did after I got back, I started this game in Burbank, California. I was out visiting some friends and went to Disneyland and had a great time enjoying, the 65, 70-degree weather out there, and started watching the game on the plane about 15 minutes after we took off, landed in Denver, continued to watch the game as I walked through the airport, got in about halftime, listened to the rest of the game as I was driving home to where I live, up more northern Colorado, on the radio, and Kevin Harlan was calling the game, and it was very stressful listening to the radio broadcast of this game. I got home about a minute after the final, after the final whistle, and you're right. I mean, like it just was it was a completely hostile environment as advertised. Bills Mafia packed the stands, very loud, throwing snowballs. I mean, literally like during play. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing that, I mean, who's going to stop them, I guess, but it's
Yeah.
amazing that they get away with that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But you know what? The Chiefs come out with the victory, and they did it, as always, through the Chief system.
Through the Chiefs system. It is, of course, the system that the Chiefs use to win NFL games. It's a acronym: C, create drama; H, handle adversity; I, inspire hope; E, engage physically; F, finish strong; and S, separate entirely. So we
Mm.
start, as always, with creating the drama. And sometimes this is a little bit of a stretch or a squint to see like what kind of drama was available early on in these games. That is, of course, not the case when Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes match up. Create drama was the playoffs. It was Bills versus Chiefs. It was first road game for the Mahomes era. It was revenge for 13 seconds. It was, will the Chiefs make a step forward this year in the playoffs after kind of sleepwalking their way through the regular season? All these questions hung in the air. Taylor Swift was in attendance, as always. Jason Kelsey was in attendance, which anyone that has been living knows, and he ripped his shirt off and had a great time, and it was super funny. But that's the drama. That's the create drama in this game. It was again, as nervy and dramatic of a game, basically before a Super Bowl that you can conceive of. Big deal this game.
What I appreciated about the creation of the drama was how much the Chiefs leaned into it. Not to say that they played it up, because obviously in interviews all week they were being asked about it, and they're like, I mean, listen, like this is not the first time that Chiefs played a game on the road, right? Like a road playoff game is obviously an order of magnitude more difficult than playing a road game in the regular season, but it's not
Right.
completely different. It's not,
No.
you know, Bills fans wanted to make a big deal out of the fact that Patrick Mahomes had never been to a full stadium. Not only Bills fans, but Bills players. Dion Dawkins said,
Good
they've
luck.
never seen our crowd. Good luck. But I really appreciated how the Chiefs embraced the challenge and really heightened the drama. One of the things that I think is underrated about Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback is what a showman he is. And
Hmm.
I tweeted this out today, but we both were getting caught up on the franchise, the excellent production that our friends over at 65 Toss Power Trap Productions, uh, over One Arrowhead Drive, and shout out to our guy, friend of the show, Matt McMillan, produce. And the last episode, recapping the Dolphins game, ended with, just a shot of Patrick Mahomes being asked, like, this is your first opportunity to play a playoff game on the road. What's it like to embrace that challenge? And he just like stares directly into the camera and gives like the slightest little smirk, and then it cuts to black. And I mean, we knew that we were going to get something dramatic. Like we knew that this game was going to live up to the hype. There was no way
Yeah.
that it couldn't live up to the hype, and
Yep.
it delivered. Drama created.
Drama created. And so, of course, after creating drama, the Chiefs have to handle some adversity. So early on in this game, I would consider matching field goals with the Bills on the first offensive drive by each team to be pretty well adversity handled. It can be really challenging early on in these types of environments to not get, overwhelmed by the emotion, let the offense or let the other team's offense really get going early and all that stuff. And after the 3rd and 17 forward pass that was not called, where the Bills got down to where they had a manageable 4th down and then converted it. They drove down, but the red zone defense stiffened up for the Chiefs. They forced a Tyler Bass kick, which he made this time. And then the offense, they didn't have a 3rd down on their opening drive until 3rd and 5 from the 29-yard line. Mahomes put a tough pass up, but it definitely got very close to Justin Watson. He couldn't pull it in, and the Chiefs settled for their own 47-yard field goal by Harrison Butker to tie the game. Sometimes if you would have told me that after the first drive on each team it was 3-3, I would be a little disappointed, especially in eras where I was expecting more out of the Chiefs offense. But in this case, I felt that the way the Bills were, moving the ball, that ending with a field goal was a big deal. And then for the Chiefs to not come out flat-footed, to not come out and just immediately punt back to the Bills, go ahead and go down the field and match them score for score. I felt that was a pretty good way to handle that really tough crowd.
Yeah, I think obviously you prefer to hold them scoreless and then go down and score a touchdown, right? But in terms of handling adversity on the first drive of the game, I mean, the Chiefs had the opportunity potentially with the 3rd and 17, lateral that was actually a forward pass to challenge that. They didn't do it. They had numerous opportunities just on the first drive to jump on a fumble and didn't do it. They fumbled the first play of the game. Chiefs couldn't get it. Kincaid bats it out of bounds, and they get called for a penalty for that, which puts them way behind the sticks. They come up with this illegal forward pass, which the Chiefs don't challenge, which would have been a loss of downs that would have forced a punt. And then I think the very next play after they converted on 4th and short, after they got the illegal forward pass to stick when the Chiefs did challenge it, they fumbled the ball again, and the Chiefs aren't able to jump on it. So, I mean, you've got like 3 opportunities on that drive to end the drive. So all things considered, the fact that the Bills only came away with 3, despite the Chiefs really handing them a couple of gifts in terms of, not being able to jump on fumbles and not challenging something that they definitely absolutely should have challenged, pretty good. And then, on the offensive side, the Chiefs moved the ball. And I think it seems like when we were talking about the Miami game last week and then this game this week, I mean, the theme is being able to move the ball. And that doesn't seem like a big deal for a team that has the offensive resume that the Chiefs have had in the Patrick Mahomes era. But for the 2023 Chiefs, the mere act of moving the ball, matriculating the ball down the field without having a turnover or a dumbass penalty that kills the drive. I mean, ultimately, I don't know that you could call this Justin Watson play a drop per se, because
it was tough.
The coverage was tight, but I mean, it did hit him. I mean, Mahomes put it right where he needed to put it, but still, I mean, they got it down, they got it in field goal range, and Butker was able to knock it through in pretty adverse kicking conditions. Let's be clear, that will come up again. Spoiler alert. So yeah, I'd say adversity handled.
Yeah. Just real quick on the point on moving the ball, I do think that the underrated superpower of the high-flying Mahomes Chiefs offense was not necessarily scoring touchdowns, although that was a product of their superpower, which was moving the ball. It was converting first downs. They converted those at a historic rate every year until this year. Their first down drive succession conversion rate was 5 of the top 20 offenses of all time. And then it obviously took a step back this year. So to see them just be able to get back to that, like, first downs are kind of coming easier, where when they struggle, they certainly don't come easy. I mean, every yard, when you and I were bitching about how they were struggling earlier this year, a lot of that was just because the offense felt so difficult. It just felt
Yeah,
so hard
right.
to get from one chain to the next. And then even if you don't, even in cases like this where they ended a field goal or you ended a turnover, whatever, if I can watch the Chiefs move the ball, I definitely feel better about their chances to hang with the other team. It's when they just can't freaking get it, even a first down, that drives you nuts. So
Sure.
adversity
And I
handled.
mean, when they move the ball, the touchdowns are going to come eventually.
Yes, exactly. That's a little bit of noise in there. Red zone offensive conversion rates and stuff. So, I mean, you definitely want to be able to see them move the ball. So then, of course, that kind of dovetails into the I inspire hope. The Bills had taken a 10-6 lead on a Josh Allen rushing touchdown. They punted to the Chiefs in the second quarter for the first punt of the game, which, both teams had been kind of going back and forth. And the Chiefs went 5 plays, 65 yards, did not need a third down attempt. And they cashed in on a wide ass open Travis Kelce corner route for a 22-yard touchdown. The Chiefs took a 13-10 lead. And then after getting into halftime, they opened up the second half with a 30-yard bomb to much maligned Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Mm.
And I felt inspired. Kelce was playing like his old self. Marquez was back. The Chiefs were back. I mean, I just felt that this was like seeing a couple touchdowns in a row. You know, the Miami game, even though they scored a lot, they definitely were not just banging touchdowns out there. But then to go, the Kelce touchdown and then open up the second half of the touchdown and take that 20-17 lead, that was huge.
Yeah. And I mean, let's not forget the performance by superfan Jason Kelsey,
Man,
inspiring a lot
so
of hope
inspiring. Yes.
for everybody watching the game. Just a brilliant performance by him, taking his shirt off and jumping out of and then back into the box, which was a supreme feat of athleticism. No, you're right. I mean, like the fact that the Chiefs were able to consistently move the ball, punch it in for touchdowns, and hold serve on the defensive side. We'll talk about the defense, I'm sure, tightening up in this game. It wasn't great in the first half, but they did get a stop in there and they did, force a field goal and they they held on. And we knew from pretty much everything that's happened this year, at least the latter half of this year, that if you're gonna deliver the kill shot to the Chiefs, you better do it in the first half
Yes.
because we knew the defense was going to step up in the second half of this game, and they did. So I would say the fact that they were able to tread water and keep their heads above water in the first half was an inspiring performance by the defense as well.
Yes, it was. So then, of course, you get to the E, engage physically. Sometimes
Mm,
this is a play. Sometimes it's more a player and how physical they are. And I just think we should highlight how awesome Isaiah Pacheco was in this game.
sure.
15
Didn't play in the
carries.
last game
Didn't play in the
against.
last game against the Bills, and according to Bills fans, that was no big deal, that it wouldn't really matter. And 15 carries for 97 yards, adding a 14-yard catch in there, so he goes over 100 yards from scrimmage. And as we often say about Pacheco, it's not just the raw production, it's not just the yards in the stat sheet or anything like that. It's attitude, it's physicality, it's just his desire when he's out there. You know, I kind of thought maybe at first when the Chiefs were playing Pacheco a lot and people were talking about his running style and how angry he runs and all that, that it was kind of just more like a funny um
Sure.
like description of like his movement type, like that his feet would pick up kind of heavier or whatever, but it never really sunk in for me that he actually was like the hardest working player on the field until getting to watch him over the course of a full season and carrying the workload and being, and especially on an offense that needs somebody like him to be
Yeah.
able to take
Right.
the weight off of Pat. And I mean, I feel great when they hand the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco. I feel great every single time. And I haven't been like that with a running back. I mean, in a while. Certainly in the Mahomes era, I felt good about Kareem and I knew that he was talented, but I still wanted Pat throwing the ball all the time. And with Pacheco now, I do feel the balance of the offense, and like when they run the ball with him specifically, I feel that that's just as effective of a play call as any pass they could draw up. So very physical. Loved his whole attitude in this game. Can't think of a better player to talk about on engaging physically than Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, and you know who doesn't feel great when the Chiefs hand the ball off to Isaiah
The
Pacheco?
defense.
The defense of the
Yeah.
Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
And I mean, for a second week in a row, I don't want to overstate this because it is a little bit hand wavy and, unquantifiable. But I can't imagine that it is fun to tackle Isaiah Pacheco at any point. Probably
In
not
the
in
cold.
September or October, but I can almost guarantee that it is much less fun
Yeah.
when it's 10 degrees outside, like it was in this
Jesus.
game. And, there's snow packed under all the seats in the stadium and everybody's freezing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it can't be fun. And, there's something about being able to, the Chiefs obviously were lucky that the Bills were banged up, especially a linebacker, but like, it's great to have the kind of player in Pacheco to take advantage of that, right? Like if
Mhm.
if they're gonna throw out, AJ Klein dragging his old ass out there to try and tackle, Isaiah Pacheco in space or guard Travis Kelsey, who's 32 years old and hasn't played a whole lot of football the last couple of years. He was on 3 different teams last season. Like if they're gonna do that,
Make them pay.
you should be able to punish them for that. And it's
Absolutely.
absolutely did that, engaging physically. And, listen, Pacheco, I feel like, has almost single-handedly beat the criticism that the Chiefs were a finesse team. Like that was
Yes.
like we were the Dolphins for a while when we had Tyreek,
Hmm.
when it was
Hmm.
Tyreek and Travis and Sammy Watkins and,
Yeah.
it's all Andy Reid and, the scheme and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like Pacheco has sort of like single-handedly been like, no, no, we're a physical team too, and we
Yeah.
will beat you physically, and we will beat you. Now, listen, I don't want to diminish the role that the offensive line has played in that, and
Yeah. They've been a big role
the
in that.
center of the offensive line, Creed, Trey Smith, and Joe Tooney have been here a year longer than Pacheco has, and
Hmm.
have been playing in every game for a year longer than Pacheco, who really only came on at the end of last year. But he's sort of the personification of that physicality for the Chiefs, and boy, was it on display in this game.
It was really, really great to see that physicality. And then, of course, you get to the F finishing strong. And we're going to switch over to the defensive side of the ball. We've been talking a lot of offense here, as you and I are wont to do. The last 3 defensive possessions for the Chiefs was a failed fake punt, but that was a forced punt. It was better than that because the Bills ended up failing on their punt. But I mean, even just to force a punt there was big. And then the 3-and-out right after the next defensive possession was right after the Hardman fumble in the back of the end zone, where the Bills could have seized control of this game. They
Yep.
were down 3, and they absolutely, and in fact, I think most people watching this game expected, as soon as Mecole Hardman fumbled that ball and the Bills got it at the 20, they could have been down 10. Instead, they were only down 3, that they were going to march right down the field and take the lead. But instead, they didn't even get down the field. They didn't even get a first down. They were immediate 3-and-out. Chiefs defense really stepped up there. And then, of course, even on the final drive, which even at, just getting to that to a field goal instead of a touchdown was a big, big, big win, given the history of the game and how Josh Allen had been playing and all that. But they got down as far as the 26-yard line and got no closer. The Chiefs covered brilliantly on the third down attempt. After the second down attempt, they had the pass rush from Chris Jones that got in the face. He actually went straight through Deion Dawkins and got right to the face of Allen, as he could have hit a wide open Shakir in the end zone for a touchdown, and instead
Sure.
it was an incomplete pass. So just a lot of really good stepping up there, and then that's how you finish strong. You want to make sure that not only are you holding serve on defense, and not only are you not just letting them run right down your throat, but that you're coming up with your own game-saving, big-time plays. The Chiefs are not just a wait for the offense to score and hope the defense can, be out there on the field like they used to be for the last couple of years. They have playmakers. They make plays on defense just as often as they make plays on offense. And those 3 last drives by the defense were all complete money in the bank.
Yeah. A couple observations about that. I mean, obviously the failed fake punt, like you said, that is I mean, you got to give credit to special teams because they only had 10 guys out there and
Drew
they made a
Tranquil
play.
was
I
a
mean,
monster. Not only did they have 10 guys out there, they had a double team on the gunner on the right side.
uh-huh.
So really in the play,
Yeah.
you've got the punter and the returner are not involved. And then the two double teams on the gunner and then the one-on-one on the left side. So it was 9-on-7. I mean,
Right. Right.
they were 2 men down because they had the double team, and yet Drew Tranquil just fought through the wash and was able to
And it wasn't
make a
even
play on
close. I
that.
mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't even,
Oh, yeah.
they weren't even close to
They
converting it.
killed DeMar Hamlin. Yeah. Womp, womp.
But listen, it was hugely impressive for the defense to step up and force that stop. And like you said, to turn around and get a 3-and-out after the Hardman fumble. I mean, that is it just can't be understated how big that is for the defense to come out and deliver. And this was the Chiefs defense that we've seen all season.
Yes.
This was the
Yes.
Chiefs defense that was winning the team games when the offense couldn't get its head out of its own ass in the middle of the season, if we're being honest. And the team that closed out, the wins over Miami and the wins over the Bengals and just showed up down the stretch and absolutely pulverized the Dolphins last week. That was the Chiefs defense that we needed to see. They finished the game strong. On the other side, because we're not going to talk about it, I do want to say before we get to the last, separate entirely, I have full confidence that had things turned out differently, that the offense would have finished this game strong, and the offense would have gone down and gotten Harrison Butker in position to make a game-winning field goal. And
well, yeah, it's what they've been doing all game.
We didn't have to see it, but in the post-game interviews, Butker was talking about it. Mahomes was talking about it. Just they were prepared for the Bills to tie the game up, and they were prepared to go down and kick the game winner with a minute and a half and a couple of timeouts to go. And we didn't have to see it in this game, but I have full confidence that a Chiefs offense that was averaging almost 8 yards per play would have been able to get that done with a minute and a half left on the clock. And that brings us to separate entirely.
Separate entirely. Wide right. Not much you can say. The Bills had a shot. They could have tied the game up. They shanked it. Womp womp.
Rany has an unbelievable discussion about kickers. We've pre-recorded that, so I keep making reference to this conversation that's already happened, but he's very generous with his time, and we like to meet with him usually early in the week. But definitely stay tuned for that discussion because he has some absolutely bananas numbers about the Chiefs' playoff kicking situation, and they were the beneficiary of wide right in this circumstance. But again, it's not like that play decided the game. It obviously did decide the game in the Chiefs' favor, but had he made that kick, it's not like the game is over. It's not like Scott Norwood with the game on the line, down a point in the Super Bowl, kicking for the win and missing it with no time left on the clock. Right. You still have to stop Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid and Harrison Butker, who has been perfect in the postseason in two of the worst kicking environments you could possibly have. The fourth coldest game in NFL history. And then Buffalo, he talked about this in his presser this week when he was up at the podium. Buffalo is like one of the shortest stadiums. The upper bowl is small. Like it's low to the ground. And so the wind there behaves completely differently from a stadium like Arrowhead that has the taller upper decks. And, Tony Romo literally, he was brutal in this game, by the way. But
he's been brutal for a while.
He's going downhill fast, and he was never great to begin with, but boy, he's really dropped off the cliff. One of the first things that he said, literally one of the first things out of his mouth when the game is being kicked off is, the coin toss. I think whoever wins the coin toss should take the ball because then you're kicking into the more favorable corner of the stadium, and the corner the Chiefs were kicking into would have been kicking into on a game-winning drive. Butker was good from 48, I think he said was the range they were comfortable with. Chiefs would have got that done. They would have separated entirely, whether wide right happened or not. But we appreciate Tyler Bass making it easier on us and, not making us sweat it out the final minute and a half. Let's get into our awards. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this system, we have 3 different types of awards. They are inspired by It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. We have 5-star men. who threw their play on the field yell, "I'm a five-star man." We have trash men.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Who threw their player eating garbage all over the field. And, sometimes that's a player, sometimes it's more of a concept. And then we have wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Who are capable of anything. Last week, we did numerous five-star men awards to celebrate the first playoff win of this run this season. This week, we're only going to do one each. And I'm not going to, as we did last week, draw this out. There's not going to be any drama behind it. We waited until we had done 6 nominations to roll Patrick Mahomes out there as a five-star man. I'm not going to do it. He's my five-star man. I'm going to start with Patrick Mahomes. 17 and 23 in this game. I think 4 of those were throwaways, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, no sacks, no interceptions. I mean, no negative plays really in this game at all. When he needed to throw the ball away and live to fight another day, he did. He had a big run in this game. The final number is 6 attempts for 19 yards. Don't look that good, but 3 of those were kneel bound. So pretty much
he had a
those
25-yard rush in there that was unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. And a huge play in the Chiefs converting a scoring drive. I mean, listen, this was an amazing performance, and I feel like in a lot of ways very similar to the performance against the Eagles in the Super Bowl, where he didn't have a lot of attempts and he didn't need to throw the ball all over the yard for the Chiefs to win the games because of what the defense and the special teams were doing and just the small number of possessions in this game. Sure. But he was amazingly efficient in this game. By EPA per play, this was one of his best playoff games of his career. Right up there. It's top 3 or 4. We will talk about that with Rany. But what can you say about Patrick Mahomes? Playoff Patrick Mahomes playing in his first true playoff road game. Of course he was a five-star man. Of course.
Pretty easy pick there. He is forever five-star man every time we do this pretty much. If we don't name him as a five-star man, just assume he was a five-star man. That's usually how that works.
Sure, right. Sometimes we have to pick other people just so the show doesn't get stale. Boring.
Yeah. And I mean, I could say the same thing about the next guy, but in this case, for sure, Travis Kelce deserves some love as a five-star man. 5 catches on 6 targets, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns, passes. He and Mahomes passed Brady and Gronk for the most playoff touchdown passes between a quarterback and a receiver in NFL history. So
no, it's not a tight end. That's any receiver.
It's not a tight end, and it's not just, a lot of times when you break these records, Kelce talks about what does he call those bad chump records or something? Or no, I forget. I forget how he phrases it, but like there are some records that don't really mean a ton. They're just like statistical, and it's not the LeBron stat, but he has like another name for just like a nothing record, where it's a record, but it doesn't mean much to anybody. And then you start getting later in your career, you start getting more, successful, more playoff games under your belt, and then you start like getting the records, getting the like actual, big and this most touchdowns between a quarterback and a receiver is a huge playoff record. That's
it's crazy.
It is crazy, and it's crazy they've done it in 6 seasons when Brady and Gronk had much more time than that, many more games so far than what Pat and Travis have done. And I mean, just to name him as a five-star man for this game, his corner route was wide open. That was vintage Trav, just getting a little, putting the corner and the safety in a blender and taking it.
Yeah, and Josh Allen asking him how he got so open.
Yes, exactly. Going in the same tunnel exactly. And then the second touchdown was, arguably more impressive just from the, like, he still got it perspective. Like it's a little like a tight end bubble screen type of thing over the left, tight goal line, 3-yard line. And he's got to beat his man, I think it was AJ Klein in this play, to the corner of the end zone. And he does, and he stretches, and he gets across barely before touching down. Held on to the ball.
While diving towards the pylon. So
just a big vintage performance from Big Yeti. He was awesome and much deserving of five-star man.
Yeah, I mean, how could he not be inspired with Jason and Kylie and Taylor all in attendance? But he had a great turn back the clock game. And listen, we talked about this at the end of the regular season when he made the decision to sit for the final game and break his record 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Obviously had an easy chance to go for 8,000. He could have gone out there, could have had a couple of catches, but this is the exact kind of record he was talking about that you just
Yep.
mentioned. I can't remember what he calls them either, but the reason he sat that game is because he wanted to get his body right for the playoffs. And we've had 2 games in a row where he has looked like, if not vintage Travis Kelce, certainly like as good as late career Travis Kelce has been
Right.
over
As
the
good as
last
we could
couple of
expect
weeks,
it to look.
as
Yeah.
good as we could reasonably expect a 34-year-old man playing in, his 17th and 18th games of the season. At this stage of the playoffs, and he was great. No notes, 5-star man for him. Trash man. Listen, I'm going to give you the obvious choice here, and I'm going to go a little bit outside the box here. The Chiefs did not have a lot of bad players in this game. They really just had one bad player who happens to have been the one bad player that we picked for the trash man last week as well.
Right. Imagine
so unfortunate little streak for him, but I'm going to go with the Chiefs replay team. For those of you who don't know, the replay process in the NFL is weird. I don't know when I learned this, but the guys in the replay booth that are, radioing down to the field to tell Andy to throw the flag or not, they've got a whole team, or at least a guy that does that. And they're looking at the broadcast copy of the film. So like they don't get any additional camera angles. They're watching the same thing that we're watching as fans, and they're essentially just making a call based off of that, whether or not the challenge flag needs to be thrown. And obviously they need to do it before the opposing team runs another play. So they have at most, 40 seconds to make that determination. And the Bills were cognizant of the fact that the Chiefs might challenge this. So they were running a hurry up. But listen, it's an illegal forward pass if it is caught by the receiving player further up the field than where it was released by the quarterback. And that's a pretty simple thing to check the tape on. Press the pause button, look at the hash marks and press the pause button. And, it was so obvious that Nance and Romo, who, especially Romo, I've already dunked on him once on this podcast. I mean, like, it's not rocket science. It's actually pretty simple to see in this case. This was an easy challenge for the Chiefs to make, and it would have been a loss of down, and the Bills would have had to punt. And they didn't end up scoring a touchdown, but they got 3 points on that drive.
Right.
And the defense had to be out there for, not just the yardage, not just the points, but the physical toll it takes on your defense to have to, play out, another 7, 8, 10 plays that you shouldn't have to play because you got to stop. You got off the field.
Well, it would have been a 3 and out too. So like, think about just the mentality of starting off that playoff game and forcing them to
against Josh Allen. I mean, against the guy and this went on to be a 14-play drive.
Exactly.
This was a 14-play drive that could have ended after 3 plays if the Chiefs replay guy had done his job. In this case, pretty big swing and a miss from the Chiefs replay guy. So I don't know what his name is, and I'm sorry to throw him under the bus, but he's trash.
It used to be. Oh no, I think isn't the Royals guy Bill Duplessis, or he was at one time. I was just trying to think. That's the only name that came to mind for a replay guy, but no, that was the Royals replay guy back like 8 years ago when we watched baseball.
Sure,
I obviously, as you said, you're leaving the easy pick for me, and I appreciate that. That's some good teamwork. That's what you and I do.
It's like an alley-oop.
It is an alley-oop.
I'll throw it up. You'll dunk it through the hoop.
And I will dunk on McCole Hardman because he was really bad. He had 2 touches. He fumbled them both. They recovered one that the Bills did jump on. And then I believe it was Justin Watson that kind of snaked the ball out of the Bills' recovery and got it himself. And then, of course,
that's correct. It was Watson.
And then, of course, stretching for the pylon on 1st and goal for a guy that's not strong. It's like, it's one thing if Isaiah Pacheco wants to stretch the ball and fumbles it, like I'm giving it to him. Like he is a stout individual down at the goal line, but this was just a brain fart, just a fuck up. Like he just should have understood the time and the place to do that. And he should have gone down and let someone who's good at football score the touchdown, but he didn't. This is 2 weeks in a row where the only bad performance on the field is one player, and it's number 12. And that's just not acceptable. That's not acceptable at this stage in the season. That's not acceptable for this type of team and what they have at stake and in front of them. And I'm just really disappointed. I'm disappointed that Hardman can't seem to do the deep passes correctly, which is why he was a trash man last week.
Yeah.
And he can't seem to do the short stuff correctly, which is why he's a
Yeah.
trash man this week. What can he do? Get him off
Yeah.
the field immediately.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean it's just, and this has always been the case with McCole Hardman. He's just never really evolved as a player. And last week it was not being able to track the ball in the air, which is something that he's never figured out. And at this point, we have to assume we'll never figure out. But this week it was, I mean, situational football, which is something that as a 5-year vet, this is his 5th season in the league. He should know better in that situation than to play that as aggressively as he did. As you said, it's 1st and goal from the 3, and the Chiefs are up 27-24.
Yeah, they're not desperate for a touchdown.
They already have the lead. It's 1st down. You have 3 yards to go. You have Isaiah Pacheco. Like if you go down at the 1-inch line, I guarantee you Isaiah Pacheco is converting that for a touchdown. He's getting in. Like probably even Clyde if they run him up the middle. Maybe they've got the Patrick Mahomes sneak in the playbook and they throw that in there. Like it's 100% going to be a touchdown or at least a field goal if you just hold on to the ball. So you just don't have to be. I mean, it's literally the only thing you could do in that situation to fuck it up, to fumble the ball through the end zone, which I think is a dumb rule. I know that people like this rule is controversial. It has its proponents. It has its detractors. I just think it's stupid because at no other point on the field does recovering a fumble, advance the ball 20 yards for you. But that's neither here nor there. It's a rule. And you have to be aware of it if you are a 5-year veteran in the NFL. If you've played like 3 games of Madden, like it's just something that you have to know, and you have to know that you can't do it in that situation. And despite all of that, he did it. It backfired. The Chiefs lost the ball. It could have cost them the game. It didn't, but he is an obvious obvious no-star man, a trash man.
I gotta keep going on because I'm so worked up about Hardman. I've got to do my wild card.
Okay.
And
all right.
My wild card for this game was a guy that I guess you could say I didn't really expect a lot of productivity out of just based on his role so far this year. It was his 8th start of the year, but Shamari Connor, safety, ended up being PFF's highest graded safety of the weekend of all 4 games of both, 8 teams, 2 starting safeties each. And he had the best grade. He had 10 tackles. He was solid. He forced the fumble on Diggs on the opening play that they batted out of bounds. And just in general, Mike Edwards goes down in this game on the first drive, hits his head and gets a concussion and is out. And so you're relying on a rookie in Shamari Connor that, much like, I guess the profile of the rookies this year, it's not quite the Super Bowl from last year where you had 6 starters that were rookies. But I mean, you kind of forget that by this time, like rookies are pretty good. Like they've got it figured out. Obviously the Chiefs have figured that out with Rashee Rice. And on this end of the ball, Shamari Connor, wild card, just because he's capable of coming out and being the highest graded safety of the weekend, despite not really having the reps. He has played this year, but certainly not like a starting safety, badass rep that he did.
Sure.
So shout out to Shamari Connor.
Yeah, I mean, Shamari Connor, the last game that he started, besides the season finale where the Chiefs were resting their ostensible starters, was the first Bills game in early December. So he had a long stint where, I mean, it's not like he was on the bench, but he was not starting all of December, down to the stretch, got a little bit of action, in that essentially preseason game where the Chiefs were resting their starters at the end of the year. And then, to come in and play 99% of the snaps in a road playoff game as a rookie safety against Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Khalil Shakir and, this pretty proficient offense. It takes a lot, and it takes a special kind of player to be able to step up and do that. And really, the rookie class as a whole is not nearly as impressive as what the 2022 Chiefs rookie class did.
Right.
But
how could they be?
He's cut from the same cloth. I mean, this is the second year in a row that the Chiefs have had, deep into the playoffs, rookies making a huge impact on the defensive side of the ball, and rookies that weren't, necessarily high draft picks. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, Jamari Connor was a 4th-round pick, and
Right.
McDuffie and Karlaftis were obviously both first-round picks, but Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, guys that were making plays. Leo
Brian.
Chanel, Brian
Cook
Cook
was second. Yeah,
right, exactly. I mean, guys that that's not. It's unusual. It's not normal for mid to late round defensive rookies to be out here making an impact in a playoff game like this. So I'll close this out with a wild card, and I'm kind of going with a similar theme to you, which is not necessarily. Sometimes the wild card is somebody who has an up and down game.
right.
Sometimes the fact that they're capable of anything is because they show us that maybe they're not a trash man every single week. And, for one moment, they play like a 5-star man when you least expect it. And that is the spirit behind my nomination for the wild card in this game. It's Marquez Valdes-Scantling. 2 catches in this game. So not an overwhelming performance, and 4 targets, but 2 catches for 62 yards. Obviously, both of those went for first downs. And listen, deep ball catches. I heard somewhere, and I wish that I could attribute this to whoever created and promulgated this stat, but the Chiefs were the worst team at catching contested deep balls in the NFL this year, which is completely unsurprising. Like, that could be a completely made up stat, and I would be like, it's correct. It does not need to be vetted. It does not need to be analyzed. No. Whatever methodology you use to determine that the Chiefs are the worst team at catching contested deep ball passes in the NFL, it's accurate. It's correct.
Catching a lot of stuff, it would be accurate, but yes, including contested deep balls.
We don't need to litigate this. It's correct. And what do you know? He did it in a divisional round playoff game, and it's a hilarious contrast because the Bills, Stephon Diggs and Trent Sherfield, both could not come up with contested deep ball passes. And, that may have been the difference in the game, is that Marquez Valdes-Scantling, for once in his life, decided to show up and catch the ball when it was thrown to him. And, perennial all-pro Stephon Diggs and, that other guy, Trent Sherfield, didn't do it. And the Chiefs win this game. That's a wild card performance that we didn't see coming for Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
Well, it's the playoffs. The Chiefs are still in it, which means we are fortunate enough to be joined by Rany Jazayerli of The Ringer for and I count 10 times on the show with us. So, Rany, happy 10 episode anniversary with us. How are you doing? And do you have any stuff for us to start hyping for you yet?
So 10 times I've been on the show. That's remarkable when you consider that almost every time I'm on, it's because the Chiefs are about to play a playoff game or just played a playoff game. If you had this podcast starting in like 1972 and it ended in like 2017, we wouldn't have done that many more. So,
right.
So yes, it's it's a tradition now. It's a tradition. I have to do this, and I enjoy it. It's a tradition for me to go skiing in the heart of Broncos country in Vail in the middle of January. And it's become a tradition apparently to watch the Chiefs beat the Buffalo Bills in a very stressful playoff game while I'm there, because I watched all 3 of them from the same place with the same friends, good friends, this kind of friends who will offer you condolences when Josh Allen scores the go-ahead touchdown with 13 seconds left. Good times were had by all. But this time not quite as stressful, but a lot more stressful than it probably should have been.
Yeah, certainly. We will we'll get into that. I wanted to start with something that I saw that somebody famous bit from one of your tweets. Just want to see what you think about the Mahomes 16-game stat line versus the last 10 non-Mahomes MVPs that you tweeted out. And then within 24 hours, Nick Wright, who we love, does a great job, does really, really good work on First Things First, literally had the graphic up, no attribution. I was miffed for you. Did you see that? Do you have any thoughts?
Maybe it's a coincidence. They used a different number of games. I've talked to Nick on his radio show many years back. I have a lot of respect for him, and obviously he sort of does. He's the Chiefs hype man on TV that I try to be in print from time to time. So
that's good.
So I appreciate his work. Yeah, I don't know if he got that idea from me or not, but it was something I've been sitting on for a while. I hadn't really run the numbers, but it was, going into this game, I knew this is his 16th playoff game, and I still consider 16 to be a full season.
Yeah, same.
And just knowing that if we won, he'd be 13-3, which is like a tremendous regular season record for any quarterback. So when the game was done, I pulled up the spreadsheet because I wasn't going to sleep anytime soon. I can tell you that. And ran the numbers, and it was just as glorious as I thought. I mean, you may have the stats right in front of you.
I do.
But,
you want me to read them?
Yes. Well, let's let me tell you what it is. Like,
Okay.
So we're talking about the last 10, and I made it clear, non-Mahomes MVPs, because of course Mahomes' MVP seasons were particularly spectacular, and that that might have biased the numbers. But the last 10 quarterbacks, I think Adrian Peterson actually won an MVP award in there. And these are not cheapies. We're talking about 4 Aaron Rodgers seasons, 2 Tom Brady's, a Peyton Manning, Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton being the running guys on the list, and then the random one from Matt Ryan. That's the most random one on the list, I think.
Yeah,
but
sure.
We're still talking about, like, and these are of course their best seasons, and their stats are basically indistinguishable from what Patrick Mahomes has done in the playoffs. They averaged 13.1 wins and 2.7 losses. He's 13-3.
Yeah.
Their completion percentage, 67.1%. His is 66.8%.
Yep.
They averaged 4,330 yards in their MVP season. He has 4,561 yards in the playoffs. 40 touchdowns for them, 38 for him. 6.5 interceptions for them, 7 for him. I didn't include this. They got sacked 29 times for 188 yards. He's been sacked 30 times for 210 yards. They had 276 rushing yards and 3 rushing TDs. He had 443 rushing yards and 5 TDs. So yeah, if you had to pick one year versus the other, it's 6 of one or half dozen of another. I don't think you'll get a consensus. He's basically performed like a regular season MVP in 16 playoff games against playoff defenses with all the pressure in the world. That is why. We'll get into the Ravens game coming up, but that is why I don't care if we're playing the Monstars from Space Jam. I have faith that when all the pressure is on both sides, Patrick Mahomes is in my corner.
What's crazy about that too, also, is that not only are they playoff teams in those 16 games, but he's advanced so far every time, obviously setting the record for most consecutive postseasons with 2+ wins, that they're not just wild card teams. These are AFC championships and Super Bowls. And I mean, the best of the best of the best every single year. And performing like an MVP in that sample size is, completely mind-blowing. It's unheard.
And let's not forget the weather here either, guys. These games are all being played in January and February. He doesn't play in a dome. A lot of the teams in the AFC,
say almost all of them are outdoors because almost all of them are outdoors.
Right, exactly right. Exactly, with the exception of the Super Bowls and the game that he just played in Buffalo. They're all cold weather games at Arrowhead in January. So pretty amazing. I wanted to build off of that, Randy. This is not quite as technical and as deep as yours, but I did want to show a little love to our guy Travis Kelce. This actually was brought to my attention by one of our listeners.
I saw that one as well. Yeah, this is a great stat. I'm so mad at myself for not picking up on that one. That was
sure. You should have added this to it, but Caveman Jesus, one of our listeners, brought this to our attention. Travis Kelce in 16 playoff games in the Mahomes era. So this does include some cameos by Chad Henne.
Sure. And basically in the 16 games that Patrick Mahomes started in the
correct. 1,400 yards, 17 touchdowns. And I compared this not to MVPs because tight ends are not wearing the MVPs, but do you know what the single season records for tight ends in receiving touchdowns and receiving yards are respectively?
I'm assuming it's Gronk's sophomore year is, I think, the gold standard. When you talk about tight ends, the best career, Travis Kelce, the best peak, the best individual season, I think you have to go with Gronkowski.
That's correct. And that is the record, single season tight end touchdown record, 17 receiving touchdowns by Gronk in 2011. So tied that, 17 in 16 games. That's exactly the same for Kelce. Again, in the playoffs, not, against these patsies in the AFC East that Gronk was getting touchdowns thrown to, up 2 scores in the fourth quarter,
Travis Kelce in the 16 games of the Patrick Mahomes era, he scored a touchdown in 12 of those games, like at least one. Like the consistency is absurd.
Yeah.
And then the single season receiving yards record for a tight end is Travis Kelce's. It's 1,416 yards in 2020. So, I mean, he's only 16 yards off of his own single season, regular season tight end record all-time pace in the playoffs. I mean, we're talking 16 playoff games. He has the same number of touchdowns as the single season record, and he's 16 yards off of the single season record for receiving yards, which he set in the playoffs. That's bananas. That's almost crazier than the Mahomes numbers. I mean, it's absurd.
I mean, having, two all-time goats, arguable all-time goats at the positions, who both play at a better level against postseason competition and postseason weather. I think we have a pretty good handle on why the Chiefs are 13-3 in their last 6 postseasons. And like you said, winning 2 playoff games at least in 5 consecutive years. They had done that once in my lifetime before 2019. They had won before 2018. They had won 4 playoff games in like 40 years, and they've done at least 2. That's the thing. It's like sitting down for a playoff game with the expectation of winning now. It's like, and winning is I don't want the fact that winning is normal in the postseason. I don't want that feeling to become normal.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think the 40 years of scars that I suffered prior to 2018, I think I've overcome them. Like, I know we can lose. Well, obviously we have lost in that span, but I don't go into a game expecting to lose. I don't, even when things are going wrong, and God knows there were certainly moments in the Bills game where, 5 years ago we'd be like, oh, here we go. I know exactly how this ends. Whether it's the butt fumble with Andrew Luck, or the catch my own pass from Marcus Mariota, or missed field goals from everybody from the kicker who should not be named to Pete Stoyanovich to Morton Anderson to Lawrence Tynes. Like, now when something just unforgivable, like what Mecole Hardman did, happens, I'm angry. I'm scared, but I'm not despondent. I'm not resigned to losing. There's still that part of me that says, oh, they'll find a way to make this worse. And it's interesting this year because, of course, in the past, we'll find a way to make this work because the offense will come through. Now it's like, we'll find a way to make it work because our defense will hold.
Yes.
That's exactly what happened.
We need the offense to scratch across a couple more because the defense is going to hold it down. It's funny, thinking about a team like San Francisco that just broke their streak of like trailing by 5 or more entering the fourth quarter. I saw that stat in the middle of the fourth quarter. I'm like, yeah, oh my God. Like, how is that possible? How is a team that's been to the Super Bowl? Right.
And then, Aaron Rodgers had a stat like that too.
He did
a year or two ago, and he broke a 20-something game streak. Yeah, not having come back in the fourth quarter. It's insane.
That seems kind of. I mean, it's crazy to us as Chiefs fans, but that does seem like it's kind of the expectation that you shouldn't be able to come back all the time, and yet we've obviously seen this insane playoff stretch, which has included some of the greatest comebacks in franchise history, if not all of them. In this, stretch.
I mean, we take for granted things that no one should ever take for granted, which is the idea that you can come back in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. Like, I'll give credit to Nick Wright. They had another great stat on their Monday show that I had not picked up on, which was in playoff games where Patrick Mahomes had trailed by 7 points. We're all familiar with the 10-point deficit, which is a combined regular season postseason stat. But when down by 7 or more points at any point in a playoff game, specifically playoff game, Patrick Mahomes is 8-2.
It's crazy.
Every other playoff team, I think, since Patrick Mahomes, I think they start this in 2018.
Since 2018, that's correct.
I believe, I'm doing this off the top of my head, I believe the winning percentage was 171.
You almost got it. 178. They are 13-60.
13
and he's 8-2.
Tom Brady is, I think, 8-9 or 9. He's like
Brady's
just under
10-11.
10-11, right? One game under 500.
Peyton 3-9. Mahomes 8-2.
The established GOAT is like almost 500, and that's amazing. I mean, when losing, like we're we're biasing the sample by saying you have to be losing. Like, it's not like, oh, when you have a certain number of interceptions or certain number of yards, you're actually looking at the score. Like, that is what determines who wins and loses. The score, you're down a touchdown. To be 500 or close to it in that situation is remarkable. And again, in the postseason. 8-2. 8-2. It's just absurd. And I think I have. It's not that I take for granted that Patrick Mahomes can do it. I think the mistake I think we make is we take for granted that it's easy to do that. Like when I saw that stat that the 49ers had literally not done that in like the last 21 games, I was honestly shocked. And I shouldn't be shocked because it's hard to come back in the fourth quarter. But like Patrick Mahomes has set a standard so high, he has adjusted my comprehension of how easy it is to come back to the point where I look at I guess it's like you live in the penthouse for so long that you walk the streets and you see somebody taking the bus and you're like, they have buses, like
right,
like they don't have their own private jet, like what's going on here? Like that's how it feels after 6 years of this, that normalcy, that like mediocrity, and I don't mean that as an insult, just averageness is incomprehensible to us now.
Yeah.
Real quick before we jump into that Bills game, does that 8-2, does that include the Patriots AFC Championship game loss? Because
I believe it does. That's
because
the one
they trailed by 14 in that game.
Well, right, but the point that I'm making there is he tied the game.
Right, exactly. He never got the ball back.
And then lost the coin flip.
Sure.
So,
think about it.
That one doesn't even really count.
Well, the third, there's only lost 3, period, right? The only game he didn't, I believe, is the Bengals game, which is always the exception, which is always the anomaly.
Yes.
Right.
It's that game, and then obviously the Super Bowl where they never didn't trail by more than 7. So
Yep, it's wild. All right, Rany, we're gonna let you pick the next narrative that we're going to talk about the Bills. It's either going to be the first road playoff game, the Chiefs owning the Bills being cursed, Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, Taylor Swift ruining football, or mystery door number 6, your choice.
Let's quickly dispense with the Taylor Swift. It's funny because, both visually and metaphorically, Taylor Swift was obscured in this game by Jason Kelce.
Yes.
Right. If you even bring up like that Taylor somehow was a distraction in this game, you're outing yourself because Taylor was in the background. All I saw, like, if Taylor Swift acted in any way remotely like how Jason Kelce, like as much a look at me, obviously not topless, that would have created some sensation, but like just had brought as much spotlight on herself celebrating. And this is a man deliriously happy for his brothers scoring a touchdown in the playoff game. Like, what he did was a completely natural reaction. If Taylor Swift had done that, it would have caused the stadium to implode upon itself. I believe Skip Bayless would have been raptured probably by this point. So she did nothing. Like, she didn't even do anything. So if we're going to talk about anything, it'd just be that Jason Kelce was having the time of his life. And I will say this, that whatever suite Taylor Swift is in at any Chiefs game is immediately like the center of the universe now.
Yes.
It seems like the coolest place in the world. If they sold tickets, they would, like, the highest priced tickets in the history of mankind would be for one open spot in the booth, whatever suite that they're in, because everybody there, it's just random celebrities. She does have that gravitational pull that she just pulls celebrities into her orbit in a cool way. So you never know who's going to be there. Blake Lively will probably be there. It's like not even a big deal anymore. And it's another thing that's like, we just take for granted that, like, world-class celebrities are going to be rooting for the Chiefs at suite. Even that wasn't happening a year ago. Right. But now we have, there's a supermodel, Cara, what's her name? Cara Delevingne. I don't know how to say her name, but obviously there was the Jets game where you're like just Hugh Jackman and just like random
Ryan
people.
Reynolds and
Ryan Reynolds.
They're the Lakers. They're the Showtime Lakers. They've kind of always been the Showtime Lakers on the field, at least offensively. This year, ironically, for the first time, they're not really the Showtime Lakers offensively, but they're the Showtime Lakers in terms of the people who are there. Like, if Jack Nicholson shows up in the suite, I will not be surprised. So let's dispense with that. But what I think we should talk about is, the Bills. You talk about the curse part of it. you know, I don't think you two are old enough to remember Scott Norwood.
I've seen it. I was
yeah,
7
but you
at
weren't
the
there
time.
live.
No.
7. Okay, you
Right,
might have been
right.
right on the fringe.
Yep.
It is. I do truly feel bad for Bills fans. Like they are. We've been in the dungeon with them, right? Like we were paroled about 5-6 years ago, but like Bills, Vikings, Lions,
Yeah.
who are making their own run here. The Browns, like screw the Chargers. I don't know. But the Browns, those are teams, I probably put the Chargers in their level. Like certainly relative to the Broncos and Raiders, yes, the Chargers get a bit of a pass. But like I feel sympathy for those fans, and it's real sympathy because we've been there. We were there a long time. I don't know why we were chosen to be paroled and they were not, but we remember. We remember the times with them in prison, and I do feel bad for them. But
in the pit, we were in the pit together.
We were in the
they're still in their own pit.
They jumped into their pit and they didn't come out this time. But it was really, it says something that even when he missed a kick, and I will say, I don't know how you guys felt, but like I watched the games the week before, and in that Steelers game. The Bills won comfortably, but he had one blocked kick, and then one kick he shanked. And
yes,
I remember thinking, I'm
badly.
like, it's like this. I like having Harrison Butker on my side, and I like the fact that Tyler Bass is on their side. Like I just, it was kind of the thing you put a pin in it, and you're like, well, if this game comes down to the kickers, that's another thing that as a Chiefs fan, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I feel more confident on my side than the other side.
Totally. Was it you who tweeted that he was a ticking time bomb? I think I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I felt all along. It was just if this game came, and then when we saw how windy it was like, okay. Like at first, I'm like, oh, this is how's that going to affect the passes, etc. But then I thought about from the kicking side. I'm like, man, Tyler Bass in the wind after last week. This, so when he lined up, I wouldn't say I predicted it, but I was like very much, comfortable with the fact that they had to take a mid-range field goal attempt in that weather, knowing worst case scenario, it's a minute and a half left and Patrick Mahomes with the ball in 2 timeouts. Like there weren't a lot of bad scenarios there, short of going for it on 4th down, which they 4th and 9 they weren't going to do. So, but it's fun because in the moment, he missed it, and it just didn't occur to me. Oh my God, it's wide right. Like it did that part did. Yes. It's been so long. It's been 34 years since Scott Norwood, which was a 49-yard kick. This was a 44-yard kick, and 49 back then was like 55 today. Like guys missed. You 49 was like maybe a 60-40 proposition. Like he was favored to make it, but not by much. 44, that's it's not a gimme, but that's I don't know, at least an 80-85%.
It's a high probability play in the modern NFL for sure.
My fact checking is saying 47 on the wide right on Norwood.
Oh, 47. I take about 47.
Certainly, okay. I mean, even though it was in a Super Bowl and you're down, so it's either a win or lose kick. Like the circumstances there, obviously, is
right because they were kicking for the lead.
Exactly. It was and with no time left. I mean, it was a win or lose kick, but still. You said that the Bills weren't going to go for it on 4th and 9. Do you think that, I know hindsight's 20/20 and I know he missed the kick, but even if he had made the kick with the way that the Chiefs are moving the ball, the chances of them going down, and like my heart feels like it's 100. It's certainly extremely high that Harrison Butker is going to go hit a field goal and the Chiefs are going to win that. Looking back on it, I mean, going for it on 4th and 9 doesn't seem like that crazy of a proposition.
The way I always judge whether or not an opposing team should what the quote unquote analytics. The analytics in my head will tell you if you go for it and I'm mad, like I'm worried more, then you should go for it as the opposing team, right? And certainly in the Patrick Mahomes era, we have seen teams go for it so much more, and it's very annoying. Like not on kicks, but certainly on punts. Like how many times are you actually upset that the other team is punting? Like how many, sort of like, 4th and 16, like when are you actually like, oh, they're going for it? Great. I feel so good.
Right.
Never. And no. I will say right now, if they had gone for it on 4th and 9, I think I would have been terrified.
Yes.
Sure.
Because
Yes,
it's
especially watching them streak open in the middle of the end zone on the second down play. I mean, yes, I agree with you.
And I mean, it partly because, okay, yeah, obviously, if you go for it, you got a chance to take the lead. But also because if you make it, not only are you in a good position to take the lead, you're gonna drain the clock. Like
Yeah, burn the
that,
clock down.
the fear when that drive started, how much there was a ton of
8
time.
minutes.
8 minutes. Yeah, 8 minutes.
And the friends I was sitting with early on were like, "Wow, they're gonna take this all the way down," and I'm like, "No,
It's
that's
gonna
not
be tough.
that's not possible."
Right.
And
That's
then
what I
finally,
thought too.
they got to midfield and it was already like ticking under 4. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is possible." That was what terrified. Now, obviously, unless they got it under 13 seconds, there was always a chance. But still, I would much rather not have it come down to that.
No. Can you imagine if it did? Jeez. And Allen was criticized for not hitting Diggs underneath on the one that he missed into the end zone. That was a harder throw, but would have been a touchdown. He was open. Certainly, I don't think the decision to throw that deep ball was. I mean, I
think this is why video is good, right? This is why we've at the time it's like, oh wow, they should have gone underneath. But you actually break it all down. If he had gone to Diggs underneath,
like 5 of the 10.
I mean, I don't know if he gets the first down. I think that there are linebackers in place, but it's certainly like 3rd and 2 or whatever. I think you can make the argument, yes, it would have made sense because it would have, again, drained more time off the clock. Because even if he hits the shot to the end zone, okay, they're up before with a minute and a half. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
It was like right after the 2-minute warning. Yeah. It would have been, Chiefs would have been down 4, which also, I always think about like, would I rather be down 4 or 3? Because if I'm down 3, obviously the field goal ties it. But if I'm down 4, the coach is forced to go for the win. Right. Sometimes I like that. I like the aggressiveness that you have every 4th down in your bag from there on in. And I mean, who knows if the Bills would have been down 4 on that drive instead of settling for that field goal? They would have, they would have.
Well, it depends on how much time is on the clock. I mean, obviously, when we were it was 13 seconds, down 3,
yes, 3
please, I'll take 3. That's fine. But with a minute 40, I'd still prefer the point. I'd still prefer the option, but but yeah, you don't want it to become a crutch. I do see that with coaches too many times settling for 3 because they could live to fight another day. But I will say, like, since very, very early on in the Patrick Mahomes era, like their aggressiveness, like Andy Reid before, even with Alex Smith, if there's 30 seconds left in the half, he's taking a knee. And it was incredible to see the confidence even very early in Patrick's career that with 30 seconds left, they were taking one timeout. They were going to take a shot to get 30 yards to get that field goal before halftime. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't the issue to me. But on that play, everything I know about that is Josh Allen he was not like his job was if the first option was open, take the throw. Yeah, it wasn't his job to even look at Stephon Diggs on that play.
Take the shot. Yeah.
What happened there was Chris Jones pushed their all-star left tackle into him at the very last moment and prevented him from getting the throw off. I didn't appreciate that fully at the time, but you watch it, and this is the thing: Chris Jones, no sacks in this game, and it's easy to forget. Like that was such a huge part of the Chris Jones narrative for so long. Was 0 playoff sacks.
That's right.
But he is still such a force. Like when the game matters, he's played well in the postseason, and in the most crucial moments, he has always stepped up. I mean, this game he forced a fumble. We didn't recover because Jamar Conner didn't jump on the ball. If he did, then the story would be, Chris Jones caused a fumble, caused a turnover.
And Josh Allen's careless with the ball, which didn't become a narrative. Everyone's talking about how fantastic Josh Allen played, but obviously, if he's driving down there and fumbles the ball back to the Chiefs, that's just turnover-prone Josh Allen. So you're right. I mean, that was a big narrative.
I mean, and Josh Allen in this game. I mean, let's go back to the first half briefly here, because honestly, it was one of the few times all season where it felt like our defense was just sort of powerless to resist an opposing offense. The only game that really reminds me of that was the Packers loss, where they scored a season high 27, and I have to give the Bills some credit. Their game plan, I don't think the Chiefs expected their game plan to be so focused on the run, and just getting 6-7 yards at a time, either by handing it off or by having just Josh Allen run with it. And I mean, they ate up an enormous amount of clock, which doesn't, clock management and time of possession is highly overrated. unless you have a big lead, and obviously they didn't. But it was like they were chewing up so much clock that you knew the game was going to come down to fewer possessions than your average game. And the fewer possessions you have, obviously, the more critical every single one of them is. So it just kind of heightened the tension. But they scored 17 points before halftime. And I mean, Josh Allen was playing extremely well. And it's funny because now everyone's like, gee, he only threw past the sticks like twice the whole game or whatever. Yep. But I'll tell you this: in the first half, I wasn't thinking, geez, he's not throwing the deep ball. No, I was thinking they're getting 5-6 yards at a time, but it's irresistible. You can score a touchdown on every drive if you're getting 4 or 5 yards every single play.
Right.
And that's kind of what they were doing. So, as always, all credit to Steve Spagnuolo, because second half they gave up 7 points. That's 7 games in a row. The Chiefs have not given up more than 7 points in the second half of a game. They came out, they took the lead with their first drive, and then get all credit to Josh Allen, because that touchdown that he did throw in the second half to Khalil Shakir, the first touchdown that L'Jarius Sneed gave up all season.
Yeah, it was a dot. Unbelievable
when he threw it, they just took the lead, and it was like, we're about to go into the fourth quarter, and I could have been, I should have been angry at somebody, and I wasn't angry. I was just like, you just tip your cap. It was an incredible throw, and on third and goal from like the 13.
Yeah,
just a dot. What do you do? I mean, just Josh Allen. There's so much of this. Oh, Josh Allen just doesn't have what it takes to win in the playoffs. There's questions about this is Josh Allen's narrative. No, Josh Allen is an amazing quarterback who just has the incredible misfortune of playing, in the exact same era as Patrick LaVon Mahomes II. Like, that's all this is. Josh Allen, if in a universe where Patrick Mahomes does not exist, Josh Allen, I would have a very strong case to be the best quarterback in football. It's, after Mahomes, it's him or Lamar Jackson. We're facing them in back-to-back weeks. I mean, I don't think you can make a credible case for anybody outside of those two after Patrick Mahomes.
Well, let's talk about that, Rany, because obviously the defense stepped up in the second half, but there was a great graphic that was tweeted out from Bruno H. Mioto the other day that showed, it's just an infographic with Patrick Mahomes' EPA per play for every game of his career. And that included the playoffs. And the Bills game, and for reference, and we're going to circle back to this chart when we talk about the Ravens, Lamar's EPA per play for this season, and he's going to win his second MVP this year, is a 0.15 per EPA per play. So that's really good. That's like MVP level over a season good. Patrick Mahomes against the Bills in the AFC Championship game, 0.56 EPA per play. So roughly 4 times better than Lamar in his second MVP season. 13 seconds, 0.51 EPA per play. And then this past Sunday, 0.57 EPA per play, which would be, if you're counting, the Texans at 0.7 EPA per play.
The Texans was his best game.
That was his best playoff
This one,
game.
I think, was tied for second.
That's correct.
All you need to know is the 13 seconds game was Patrick Mahomes' worst performance
game against the Bills.
The Bills.
Unbelievable. I mean, it's just so that this week was tied with the Titans game in the AFC Championship game in the 2019 season for his second best playoff game. His other Bills game in the 2020 season, the AFC Championship game, that was tied with the Eagles for third or fourth best, however you want to do that. And then
pretty good
13
to be
seconds is right
after in the Super Bowl, by the way.
Right, pretty good against an absolute juggernaut of an Eagles team. And then 13 seconds is right behind that. So the Bills are up there with 3 of his top 6 best playoff games, all against the same team, all against the same superstar quarterback. I know they don't play each other, but I mean, like you said, you got to feel for Bills fans to run into 3 all-time great playoff performances from the same quarterback in 4 years.
Right, and again, I feel bad for Bills fans on some level, but I do especially just want to push back against this narrative that Josh Allen somehow doesn't have what it takes. Like, the man scored a game-winning. It's easy to forget about the 13 seconds and what that meant.
Right,
but I remember how I felt. Like, Josh Allen just threw a touchdown, you got the ball back with like a minute 15 or whatever, drove the length of the field and scored a game-winning touchdown with 13 seconds left to knock out, the Kansas City Chiefs and go to the AFC Championship game. He never touched the ball again. If you are going to let what happened after that, because Patrick Mahomes is on the other side, affect your perception of Josh Allen, then I don't really. I think you're more interested in like clickbait or outrage farming than actual analysis. Josh Allen is a phenomenal quarterback, and I do hope that in whatever rare season the Chiefs are not Super Bowl bound, then that maybe that one of those years that they'll have their New Orleans Saints moment. They'll have their Drew Brees take them to the promised land one time moment. But I wanted to get back to the Tyler Bass thing because for so long the narrative of the Chiefs was if the kickers got involved, it was a disaster for us. I mean, I feel like we haven't suffered quite as much as certain franchises in the playoffs, but at least until this game, I mean, yeah, they have Scott Norwood, but that was really the one time the Bills had a playoff game decided by missing a field goal kick. Maybe there's some other playoff game that they've had in their history. I'm not.
I think you're correct.
But with the Chiefs, I mean, 5 years ago, before Patrick Mahomes' first playoff game, before the game against the Colts, I wrote an article for The Ringer. The headline was "The Untold Misery of the Chiefs Postseason Kicking Wars."
No,
because we focus on Lynn Elliott, and certainly that's obviously that's
fair.
You miss 3 field goals in a game where you're the number 1 seed and you lose by 3 points, you're going to be remembered. But it's not remotely the only one.
Yep.
And I had a chart in this in which I broke it down. Since 1971, because it doesn't start with Lynn, it starts with Jan Stenerud. Hall of Fame kicker Jan Stenerud missing a field goal against the Dolphins on the Christmas Day, the only double overtime game in NFL history. It was before even my time, but it was the last playoff game the Chiefs would have for 15 years. Like everything spiraled out of control after that. But from that moment through when I wrote this, so through the 2018 season, 2018 regular season, the Chiefs had tried 35 field goal kicks in the playoffs and missed 14 of them.
14. So 21 out of 35.
Yeah, they made 60%. They missed 40% of their field goals.
Brutal,
outrageous.
And here's the thing:
and playoff kicks aren't very important, are they?
And I broke it down. There were 6 of those kicks were 47 yards or more. So the Scott Norwood number, you said 47.
Okay.
So and they were 3 of 6, which not great, but those are the hardest.
Respectable.
Kicks. Yep.
Kicks of 46 yards or less. They were 18 of 29.
Oh no.
And let's take out the gimme. So I actually kicks of between 28 and 46 yards.
Yeah.
They made 9, missed 10.
What?
They missed more than half their field goal attempts on kicks of between 28 and 46 yards. But here's the thing: and I mean, I could give you all of them. I mean, like I mentioned, I remember Pete Stoyanovich. That was actually a longer field goal, I think, but that was in the 97 divisional round game against the Broncos. The 14-10 game where he made the field goal. They called a false start, I believe, moved it back 5 yards. He doinked it. So the Chiefs, instead of being down 1, were down 4 on their final drive. They got to the 20-yard line.
Yeah,
where they could have kicked a game-winning field goal, instead had to go for it and didn't make it. There's so many of these. More in the 38-31 game, the no punt game against the Colts and Peyton Manning in 2003. Morton Anderson, Hall of Famer. Morton Anderson missed like a 30-yarder, I want to say, in that game. I mean, it's awful. But when I wrote this, one thing that had occurred to me is let me look and see how the opponents did against the Chiefs. Because when you think about if there's one event in a football game that you have as a team, you have zero control over, it is what does the opposing kicker do against you? I mean, obviously you can block it, but that's extremely rare.
Very rare. Yep.
Other than that, it is completely out of control. And actually, one of the most it's a small but very significant marker for regression. Like when you are trying to evaluate a team, let's say I don't know, you want to know how do you think the Jacksonville Jaguars will do in 2024? One of the things you want to normalize is you look at the success of opposing kickers against them, because it's completely random. If opposing kickers nailed 98% of their field goal attempts or some ridiculous number, you can be completely certain that's going to regress the next year. We know there's certain things on the field, like fumble recoveries. Teams on average will recover half of all fumbles on either side. So
unless
if
you're playing in the Bills this weekend.
well, half of one is it's a coin flip. But the point is, if you recovered 78% of the fumbles in a season, you're probably going to regress the next year. But nothing regresses harder than what your opponents do when they're kicking field goals. It's luck, right? Mm-hmm. In that same stand where the Chiefs were 21 of 35, so they tried 35 field goals, they missed 14. Their opponents tried 40 field goals in the playoffs. They made 35 of them.
That's
but
ridiculous.
It's more ridiculous because all 5 that they missed were on kicks of 47 yards or more. They tried 11. Sure. They were 6 of 11, and
6 of 11 is still good.
6 of 11 is not bad, especially because this includes games from the 80s and 90s. Again, but not only that, but of those 5 kicks, let me hold on. I'll give you the breakdown here. Yeah, all 5 came in games that their opponents won anyway.
Oh,
and in 4 of them, in that game, the opposing kicker kicked a game-winning field goal anyway. Your premium in the Christmas Day game, the Dolphins kicker missed a 52-yarder, but then eventually kicked the game ender.
Sure.
Pete Stoyanovich, before he was a Chief and cost the Chiefs the playoff game, won a playoff game for the Dolphins against the Chiefs. He had missed a 57-yarder and then nailed a 58-yarder in like 1989. That's like 65 today. I mean, it was historic, and he won the game. It came down to a 58-yard field goal, and he made it. And then in the Lynn LA game, actually, the Colts kicker missed 2 longer field goals. It was very cold, but his kicks were not gimmies, and he did make 1, and that was the difference in the game. But from 46 yards or less, 29 of 29, they never missed a field goal. And obviously, I think glaring example of this was the Steelers game with Alex Smith in 2017, the 18-16 game.
Yep.
6 of 6.
Yep.
If their kicker missed a single field goal, Chris Boswell, he hit from 43, 43, 45, 36, 38, 22. Okay, fine. The last one's a gimme, but I mean, you missed even one of those, Chiefs win.
Yeah. Yep.
So they hit 29 of 29 from under 46 yards. So and I should have known. I had a feeling something was different because I wrote that 2 days before the Colts game.
And
Patrick Mahomes' first career playoff game. And in the Colts game, you may remember.
I remember.
Yes.
I was going to bring it up if you didn't.
Right before halftime, the Chiefs are up. They're up pretty comfortably, 24-7. But with 1:40, the Colts got the ball back. Andrew Luck moved them down the field. They ran out of time. There was, the Chiefs' 5-yard line, 3rd and 1, but 3 seconds were left. The greatest kicker in NFL history,
Adam
Vinatieri, comes out to kick a 23-yarder. No good. If ever there was a notion, from the very beginning that Patrick Mahomes had already dispelled the curse that fell upon this franchise, it was in that moment. What's ironic is, so he missed that. The next 2 field goal attempts against the Chiefs in the playoffs were made, and then Kaimi Fairbairn missed one in the 51-31 game against the Texans, which we all forgot about because when you're coming back from 24-0 to take a lead at halftime, you kind of forget about one random field goal attempt.
We were lucky they even kicked the field goal there.
Yeah, but since that kick, the opposing kickers had made 20 kicks in a row.
Oh
wow!
In the playoffs.
Wow.
Until Tyler Bass. So now, Harrison Butker in that time frame has been outstanding. I mentioned 21 of 35 going into it was actually 20 of 34 because Harrison Butker, you may remember, missed his first playoff field goal attempt in the 22-21 Titans game.
That's right.
Marcus Mariota game.
Lost by 1.
Right? Like even he was not immune to this. And that is on his resume. And I mean, that's a missed field goal in a game you lose by 1 point and blow an 18-point lead. That not great. And to the Chiefs' credit, they stuck with him. And since then, he's missed 3 field goals in 30 attempts in the playoffs. So he's a 90% kicker since then. He missed a 33-yarder against the Browns in 2021.
Yeah.
A 42-yard actually in the field goal, and then the Super Bowl last year. We're going to forget about that one. And then a 50-yarder in the 13 seconds game as well.
Right.
So, but those were at least were a 50-yard. That was a 50-yard attempt. He's perfect. 11 of 11 from within 33. He's from 47 or less. He is 20 of 22 in his career. So
pretty good.
There's a reason why, even last year when he was struggling all regular season, I didn't want to move on from Harrison Butker. We have experienced the worst luck with kickers, for over a generation. And now we finally have a kicker who has proven he can do it at a 90% clip, more or less. And now it's our chance to win games because the other team is missing kicks. So this last game was really, I think poetic on many levels, both for the Bills' history, but I think also as a testament to how the Chiefs have had this reversal of fortune in so many ways.
They have. We were thinking about old 90s playoff games there, and I was reminded of a Colts quarterback against the Chiefs, Jim Harbaugh. I know you're locked in right now with us. Have you been told what happened? That he just agreed with the Chargers?
No. Is that official?
Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh as coach.
I picked up my phone and I have a text here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I thought he would stay at Michigan. Well, back to hating him, I guess.
I was gonna say, I'm sure that's a quick switch to flip. Kind of an interesting, very interesting hire for sure. We'll see how things shake out with the old AFC West rivals. But, they tried 3 straight coaches that hadn't been a head coach at any level before in their last 3 hires. And so I guess they're going for a little bit more proven, a little bit more winning coach. So
I'd like to say, winning at the college level is nothing like winning in the pros, but he did win it. He did win at the pros too.
He's like the 4th winningest by percentage coach in NFL history. His brief time, his 4 seasons in the NFL were pretty successful. Let's shift gears again. So RIP to your Michigan head coach, but I'm sure they will. That's a great job, obviously, whoever's,
and we talked about, not that long ago, we were talking about how I didn't think he would, why would you leave such a perfect job?
Right.
But I guess the challenge of trying to beat Patrick Mahomes, he just could not resist it. Okay. Good luck to you, Jim.
We're talking about a team that has been the preseason AFC West favorites for 10 years in a row.
They have. That's true.
So this is a pretty good job that he's taking here, Rany.
They have.
Clearly. The Chargers have they're 10-time defending AFC West preseason champions. So
they're preseason juggernauts.
And they're also like 40 million over the cap, and it'll be fine.
We can get some preemptive revenge by beating his brother on Sunday. So
we could certainly, and he will definitely be in attendance. So we'll get that rivalry going in a big way. Before we move on to that game, I did want to give a quick little shine to a guy that had been getting a ton of crap all year from everybody, Austin and I included.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Yes, exactly, right? It's the big surprise of the day for me, which was MVS. Of all the performances that happened, of all the ways that game would have gone, I didn't see 2 catches for 60 yards being on the bingo card, but yet Pat kept trusting him. He hit him, that sideline catch was kind of a bobble, but it was a really nice catch over the shoulder. And then the second catch deep down the field where Mahomes stepped up into the pocket and a safety bearing down on MVS, which is of all the types of deep catches he could make, contact deep catches are not something that I thought he could ever do again, ever. And yet the safety barrels into him. He holds onto the ball. Just how much did you laugh when MVS comes up with 2 big catches in a big time game? How crazy was that?
I definitely laughed. It was absurd. And I won't say I predicted it, but there was a part of me that wasn't surprised because it's like, this is the mark of a good franchise that even when players a player lets you down all season, that's the kind of player that steps like I've made this comparison before, but coming from the baseball side of things, the Chiefs do remind me a lot of like the St. Louis Cardinals in the sense that the organization's structure is so solid top to bottom that even if a player is struggling, it's not necessarily a sign that he's a bad player. Like there's a framework within the organization to get that player to improve, and to not give up on a player prematurely. And therefore, unless that player is not fixable. So in other words, the fact that the Chiefs still were giving MVS snaps all season long, was itself a sign that like the organization thinks this is fixable. And this is an organization that has earned my trust to believe if they think that, they have a good reason to, right? Whereas the opposite side of that, which is for so long what rooting for the Kansas City Royals was like if something can go wrong, it will. If somebody you do trust in a big moment suddenly does something inexplicable, and so the fact that Mahomes was still trying to make it work, it reflects positively on him, but it also on some level reflects positively on MVS. The Chiefs still believe that he had the ability to do what he did. It's so reminiscent to me of something I think was even more kind of inexplicable, which is last year in the AFC Championship game, tie game. Chris Jones is just forced, single-handedly forced the Bengals to punt with like 40 seconds left, maybe. You could like go look back at the box score. And I mean, whatever you think about MVS right now, is not, or what you thought of him a week ago, is not remotely as fearful as we were of Sky Moore on punt returns, specifically on punt returns. Like last year, the well before we just the story of Sky Moore was, oh geez, he sucks. The narrative last year was Sky Moore might have a future as a wide receiver, but God in heaven, please do not ever let this man touch a punt. I mean, they've been fumbled like 3 times.
I think it was 4, maybe. It was way too much. I can't believe they kept throwing it back. Way too much. But
I'm looking it up. 39 seconds left.
Yeah.
Drew Chrisman punts 54 yards. Sky Moore gathers it in at the 18-yard line and goes for 29 yards. And suddenly, instead of starting at the 18-yard line, the Chiefs are at midfield.
Yeah.
With 1 timeout and 30 seconds left. These are movie script moments, right? You really when you write the movie, it's the guy who's been struggling all year suddenly coming up big at the last moment. I don't know if it's necessary roughness where Scott Bakula hits the track star on the team who has a worse case of drops than MVS and hits him for the game tying touchdown.
Sure.
Actually, they would have been game tying, but they went for 2. Sorry, I don't want to ruin the game, ruin the movie if anybody hasn't seen it. But I mean, it's really literally. I've seen movies where they all movie long they're setting up this narrative. This guy cannot hold on to a football. We're never going to throw it to him.
Yeah.
Just for that last moment. And that twice now in two playoff runs, the Chiefs have had a moment just like that. And so yeah, at this point, I mean, he's not in the circle of trust, but. I think MVS is part of the game plan, in large part because, again, what the hell do you do with McCole Hardman at this point?
Right.
It's not the first time he's fumbled in the playoffs against the Bills. Like,
no, yeah,
he muffed that punt twice. He touched the ball twice in the red zone and fumbled both times. Shout out to Justin Watson. I mean, very underrated. Justin Watson's again one of those guys. Not a star, not even an average player, but we wouldn't be where we are without his contributions and gathering in the really kind of pulling that fumble away from the Bills.
Right. They had it for a second. Absolutely.
Enormous. But then, again, and it's not a fumble. Oh, you was hit hard. It's a fumble. It's just the carelessness with which McCole, handles the football to be at the 1 yard line there and to think it's so important on first down. It wasn't 4th and goal on first down to be so careless to try and reach for the end zone. I just don't see how you can run him on those kinds of plays, jet sweeps. Maybe you still use him as a deep threat because you know what? If he fumbles, it's only after he's caught a 40 or 50 yard pass anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Like I mean, the Chiefs, much like MVS, they do seem to feel like they can use him. And so I
don't
actually
have much
wonder.
of a choice though.
They don't.
I mean,
I do wonder
thin.
if they want to change the narrative with him, though. I think it's not going to be on a jet sweep. It's not going to be on one of these backfield plays. I think it has to be downfield.
True. Okay, so let's move on to Baltimore. I feel like the Bills narrative, I mean, no final thoughts on Bills. I feel like that's pretty well in bed now. They're better than the Bills. They'll continue to be better than the Bills. And now we got to look at the presumptive 2-time MVP in Lamar Jackson and the number 1 seed, one of the best teams in recent history, these Baltimore Ravens. Are you It's for me personally, I felt that the Bills game, I was confident that they could play with them. I didn't know if they'd win, but I certainly felt like they could. This is a much larger mountain to climb this week for the Chiefs. It doesn't mean they can't get there. Obviously, it'd be silly at this point to ever count the Chiefs out of anything. But I assume you're also feeling that should be a harder game for the Chiefs than last week was.
So the Bills game, not that I'm a gambler, but I know, I know what the odds makers say, that the Bills were favored, to win that game.
Sure.
It was, I think, a 2.5 point favorite, which 2.5 points is exactly home field advantage, essentially. So, the estimation was these were two dead even teams. The team with the home field will favor. And I did not feel that. I truly, not that I, was certain we'd win, but I felt the Chiefs should be favored because I felt their defense, it's not their fault, but they've had so many injuries.
Totally.
Linebacker core, like I just felt like I had the one thing I was really confident about in the Bills game was we can score, we can move the ball, and we can score against the Buffalo Bills. I was not sure that they could do the same against our defense. And for the first half, they proved that they could, and but as the Chiefs do, they figured out what works and what doesn't, and what the Bills were trying to accomplish, shut it down, and the Bills were not able to do that. Chiefs. I mean, we talk about this game, for everything we talk about the missed field goal, et cetera, and how close we came to, having being tied. The reality is the Chiefs easily could have been winning by 14 points.
Certainly.
Right.
Yeah. Like I don't statistically, they were clearly the better team in that game. And, it was the same stupid mistakes. We even mentioned not challenging the forward pass, the forward lateral on the third play from scrimmage of the entire
17.
game. Yeah, which would have made it third and 22, or I don't know if it's a 5 or 10 yard penalty, but third and very very long.
Yeah.
And I mean they only got 3 on that drive, but
I think that would have been a loss of down if you illegal
forward pass.
I think it would have just been fourth down. I think that would have just ended their field goal
guaranteed punt. And it was not just that they got 3 points, but it really set the narrative that they were just going to chew up clock and move the ball. If the Chiefs get that ball right away, having already deferred and getting the ball to start the second half as well, I mean the whole game has changed. And I mean, I know that it can be frustrating because I think the people in the booth who are on the Chiefs side who are deciding whether or not to tell Andy to challenge the play, they're looking at the same TV broadcast as we are, is my understanding, which is not ideal. But like, it's the first replay they showed, I'm like, that's a forward pass. Like, it wasn't a question, and I was quite shocked they never threw the flag. So stupid mistake. Like these are mental mistakes. That McCole Hardman's play, these are not instances where the Chiefs were getting beat on the field. They were beating themselves like they've been doing all season. And it was a testament to just how much better they were than the Bills that they won the game anyway. But I felt like they were the better team. The Ravens, this is the 17th playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career. I think this is the first time in 17 games that in my heart of hearts, I believe the Kansas City Chiefs are not the better, or at least that their opponent is the better team.
Sure.
There are games where I thought it was essentially even. Maybe the initial game against the Patriots, the Bengals game last year, where I thought, man, this is dead even. There's at least one game where I was foolish to think the Chiefs were better, and that was the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers, and not appreciating how much Eric Fisher's injury was the final domino, and just having no offensive line.
They had won 26 out of 27 games previous to that, so I understand you being confident in that team. That team was
and that's what it was, and also probably not appreciating how much the impact of Andy Reid's son being involved in a drunk driving incident probably emotionally, mentally, but did not help anybody. But also that the offensive line was just non-existent. So they in retrospect, but in the moment, I've never gotten to a Chiefs playoff game with Patrick Mahomes thinking we should be the underdog. We should be the underdog in this game. We are the underdog. By only 3.5 points, only 1 point, different than the Bills game, which to me is ridiculous. I mean, the Ravens, you don't want to get too hung up on one playoff game, but man, CJ Stroud is really good, and he's not Patrick Mahomes good, and he's a rookie, but the Ravens put him in a blender, and the Texans offense in a blender. I'm actually, I'm not sure what scares me more is their defense or Lamar Jackson. prior to that game, Lamar Jackson's playoff record is spotty. And that's the thing I always come back to is, we know that Patrick Mahomes is at his best in the playoffs. It's funny because, last year he was, hobbled for 95% of it. So it's like he was still really good, but it's like he's been phenomenal in both playoff games in like cold weather. The only thing that keeps what he did against the Bills from being historic is that he only had 23 dropbacks in the game.
Right.
I mean, and he was practically perfect. He had 6 incompletions. He talked about like his 2 mistakes though, I think like second and third down, the corner routes to MVS and Kelsey.
Yeah.
But even he acknowledged that. Other than that, I'm not sure he had, a bad throw in any of those games. It was just
right.
It's so he's at
his other
best.
4 incompletions were throwaways. So
I was going to say I was about to look that up. How many of them were actually throw?
I believe I saw it was 4 throwaways, the 2 overthrows, and everything else complete. That's pretty damn good. That's hard to. That is
absurd.
Yes,
that is absolutely absurd.
It is, Rany. This Baltimore team, though. I don't know if you're a DVOA guy, but we bring that up on the show.
Yeah, no, DVOA is extremely valuable, and it's kind of scary. What is it? Third best defense in the 21st century?
They're actually the best defense in the 21st century.
The best. I thought it was okay.
That might have changed actually, but I did look today at their overall DVOA, and they are the 6th best team in the DVOA era, which goes back to the early 80s. So DVOA thinks this is the 6th best football team in the last 40 years.
How many of the 5 ahead of them didn't win the Super Bowl?
So that's a good question. One of them
is the 07
you
Patriots.
will remember because it was the 2007 Patriots, the 18-1 Patriots. Yeah. The 2010 Patriots, who I believe also lost, that was the other team that lost to Eli, wasn't it? Or was that 2011?
I believe it was.
Eli was 08 and 11, I thought.
That could be. But
wait.
the 11?
No, the 2017.
Rodgers won.
So
2008 season.
The other two, the teams ahead of them are the 2007 and 2010 Patriots.
Uh-huh.
Then you also have the 1991 Washington team, and you have the 1985. You have the 1985 Bears, and actually that's only 4 teams, so they're actually 5th. I did the math wrong on this.
Okay.
So they're actually 5th.
Okay,
the
so
best team.
The 85 Bears and the 91 Washington. I mean, you could make it. I think 91 Washington is kind of the forgotten, like all-time great team. Statistically, you make a case they're the best team of all time, and nobody remembers them like the 85 Bears. But okay, those 2 teams are like 2 of the best, and then the 07 Patriots, the best, by acclamation, the best team in NFL history to not win a Super Bowl.
Of course.
And then you said the 2010 Patriots.
Yeah, it's hard to keep.
That's an interesting one. That's the team that that went 14-2 and then lost its first playoff game to Mark Sanchez.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's
that's interesting.
So anything can happen, guys.
Hernandez 2 tight end thing going, and
you never know. They lost 28-21. But of course, the thing to hang your head on here is the 07 Patriots, the greatest going into the Super Bowl, the greatest team of all time. They didn't lose to Eli Manning, guys. They lost to Steve Spagnuolo.
Hell yes,
they did.
And we talk about playoff Mahomes here, playoff Mahomes. We don't have stats. Certainly not the same kind of stats that we do for Mahomes, but playoff Spags.
Yeah.
Like if you want to hang your head, like I think we should be the underdogs, but I am so looking forward to winning anyway. Like I'm so hyped for this game because going into the playoffs, like we knew this is not the Chiefs at their best. It's a 4-game ladder, a 4-game juggernaut. Win the first 2. Like I really broke this up into first 2 games. We don't have to see the 49ers or the Ravens. Those games are winnable, and we should win them. And if we do, we do no worse than what we've done in the past, which is get to the AFC Championship game.
Right.
Now, everything from this point, on some level, everything from this point is gravy. Like, yes, of course, I'll be disappointed if they lose, but
given how the season's gone, though, I mean, that's pretty remarkable that they made it back here.
My rule in general is if you make it to the conference championship or the LCS, if you get to the final 4 of your sport, you have not had a fail. You've had a good season. You cannot call that a failure when you get that far.
Unless there are only 4 teams in your sport. But yes,
in the major sports, yes, and certainly when you've done it 5 years in a row, now it's 6, and you're only 2 years, two behind what seemed to be just an absolutely impregnable record of 8.
Right,
we got to 6. I'm very, very happy with where we are now. Obviously, if we get spanked in this game, then it's going to,
It'll stink.
force a lot of
It'll
reflection
hurt.
also on like what do we have to do to get better. And if we lose in excruciating fashion, then there'll always be that what if. So yes, I'm not saying I'm going to feel great if we lose by any means.
Honestly, if we get spanked in this game, we're going to join the Lions and the Niners on the other side of teams that got spanked by the Ravens this year. I mean, their big game performance this year has been unbelievable.
Outrageous.
When
they're very
playing
good.
A good team, they lock in.
And I mean, it's a cliche to say this, but look, this is going to come down to quarterbacks versus defensive coordinators, right? Because we Lamar Jackson, is a unique, he's not just about to win his second MVP, but he's just unlike anybody in the sport. I mean, him and Josh Allen, the numbers are similar, but their styles are very different. But Lamar has become a better, quarterback than he was 4 years ago when they got upset in the first round.
Yeah.
And but I still think that like he has not. It's actually, I like the fact that the Chiefs and the Ravens have not played this year. Like it's a nice quirk of the schedule because it adds to the aura of mystery here. I think that we don't know what's going to happen.
Yes.
And, if the Chiefs can keep this game reasonably close, going into the half, I just, the second half adjustments that we're going to see from Spags, my hope is, if there's a pathway to winning here, it's that he comes up with something that Lamar is not expecting and, stymies them in the second half. But on the other side, of course, Mike McDonald is probably the hottest coordinator, offensive or defensive, in the sport.
And Mahomes hasn't seen him.
And Mahomes hasn't seen him, but he hasn't seen Mahomes.
That's true.
Right?
And it's so fascinating because then on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, Spags has really dominated Lamar, but Lamar has a new offense. He's not under Greg Roman anymore. They have Todd Monken calling plays now. And so really all of the matchups here are fresh. They're new. And I feel like on some level, no disrespect to Mike McDonald and Todd Monken and John, damn it, this is going to be so confusing.
The Johnsons?
The Harbaughs. I know it should not be difficult for me,
John
but in any
is
case,
there, Jim is the Charger. Yeah.
John Harbaugh, no disrespect to any of those coaches. They're all very good, and what they've accomplished this year is incredible. But in a game where you have fresh coaching matchups all the way around and really on both sides of the ball, players interacting against coordinators that they have not faced before, you got to feel like that favors the Chiefs and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo and Patrick Mahomes.
I certainly want to believe that. Yes. And again, we know that even in the playoffs against playoff defenses, against, for obviously hot defensive coordinators. I mean, let's not forget what the Eagles, that they'd reinvented defense last year.
Yeah.
And Patrick put up 38 against them. Right. So like, we know this is the thing that if you're not a Chiefs fan and you just think, okay, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the sport, you don't fully appreciate is that he is at his peak. He's not just like the greatest player in the NFL today. He might be the greatest NFL player of all time. And he's up there with the greatest performers in any team sport in American history.
Yep.
I mean, I was comparing him in the Ringer to Michael Jordan 3 years ago. And I think that holds up because in the playoffs against the hardest competition, he's never been overwhelmed. And he usually, overwhelms the opponents who, by definition are the best in the sport and, have reason to think that, like we just said, well, Patrick Mahomes has never faced us. Yes, you have not faced him.
Right.
There's what was the movie? There's a famous line where
you're thinking of Watchmen, and you're thinking of
that's it. Yes,
of Rorschach when he's in the prison and he says, "I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me."
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're
a huge Watchmen guy.
Your stuff.
As soon as you,
it's so famous. I think about Watchmen. I know that quote, and that's what it is. Patrick Mahomes, he's not in there with you. You are in the arena with him. He is the one who knocks.
He is.
He's always been the one who knocks. But I mean, this game is yes, it's the hardest, maybe the hardest challenge he's had to face yet. But you know what? It is absolutely the hardest challenge that Mike McDonald has had to face.
Yes.
and it would do an incredible amount for his legacy. I mean, you know, on some level, you start to worry he's going to be, you know, he's going to be like Alexander in Die Hard, who wept because there were no more worlds to conquer. Like you worry that Patrick Mahomes is going to run out of, you know, of hills to come, run out of ways to elevate his legacy more than it already is. Right? That's so hard to do. This game, though, I really think is a game that could elevate his already titanic legacy.
Isn't that
If he
crazy?
goes out there and puts up 30 or 35 against this Ravens defense,
yeah,
shut it down, boys. You should never pick against this man again for as long as he is starting.
If he beats the 5th best team in the DVOA era,
right.
Waiting on the other side, assuming they get past the Lions, is the 9th best team of the DVOA era, the 2023 49ers. So if he rolls through the Ravens and 49ers, I don't think there's anything like that ever in the history of the sport. I mean,
it would certainly rank up there to go, you know, Dolphins, Bills, Ravens, Niners would have to rank among the most difficult. But just the fact that you're playing 4 games instead of 3, right? But like,
right.
It would definitely involve a lot of really smart stat guys running a lot of numbers to see is this the most impressive playoff, you know, juggernaut that you've come out at the top of.
Sure.
In
you probably could use DVOA pretty easily on that, right? Like, I mean, that's a pretty
well. When you're jumping by DVOA, it's going to be a blowout. I mean, you've got 2 of the 10 best in the same postseason.
Sure,
that's unheard of.
Before we get you out of here, I want to ask you real quick about Lamar and how you kind of look at he's had kind of an very interesting path so far. He, of course, won the unanimous MVP in 19. He struggled in the playoffs. He's back to kind of being this world beater. He's going to win his second MVP. Now, after his second playoff win last week, he has a 2-3 playoff record. Legacy-wise, is the pressure on Lamar to go up against this unbeatable Titan that is Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and beat them? Or do you think that the Chiefs, if they are legacy watching, feel like we could birth a legacy here if we let this guy beat us and go win a Super Bowl? It's up to us to keep him down a notch and vault ourselves over the top. Like, just, you know, where do you see kind of Lamar in his place right now among the greats?
I think this game has to mean more for Lamar, because if he loses, then he goes. I mean, he's in the Josh Allen bucket if the guy is just not good enough to even get to the Super Bowl, let alone win it. You know, he said he's 2-3 in the playoffs. If he loses 2-4, like you can't claim to be, you know, anywhere near Mount Rushmore if you're 2-4 in the playoffs. If he wins, well, I mean, Joe Burrow won. Right. First off, he has to go out and beat the Niners, which is not, you know, or the Lions. But if they play the Niners, it's not a gimme. They did it. It's probably the most impressive game any team has played this season, where they beat them in the regular season.
Right. Do it again, though.
You know, exactly. They're gonna do it again. If he does, if he doesn't, then, you know, it's all for the question is still there. I mean, the sport is brutal in that way. People's perceptions are brutal. Either you win it all or you don't. But if he does, guess what? Patrick still has 2. I think you would have to do it multiple times. Like this is their first meeting. So yes, he would be only the second quarterback in the NFL after Tom Brady to have a winning record against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Sure.
So yes, there's that. But one game does not, you know, is not a trend. 2, if he did it, if Lamar beats Mahomes in this game, then the next time they meet, if they meet again next year, then I think you were talking about a big deal. I mean, just like the second game against the Bengals was, I think, much more on the line than the first.
It was.
You know, the first we had to prove was a fluke, and if we had lost that game, Bengals fans are insufferable anyway. But like, level. So, but I think for now, no, this game is about Lamar. He's got home field, like, you know, he's got everything lined up. He got the number 1 seed. He had the week of rest. He has, home field advantage, and his team is pretty much at full strength. He's obviously got this incredible defense behind him too. Like, you know, I will say, of course, you know, the Ravens have incredible defense. They gave up, I think, 14 points less, like less than 1 point per game less than the Chiefs. And if you take out, points scored on, the offense giving up, fumbles for touchdowns and things, like, it might even be closer. Like the Chiefs defense, I think, is still underrated, certainly in the context of this matchup. Everyone's talking about the all-world defense and this hot coordinator. we have a defense 99% as good with a coordinator who's not hot and new, but has proven in the playoffs that he can come up with ways to stymie even the best offenses that literally ever existed. So
yeah, the greatest offense of all time in NFL history.
yeah. So I mean,
Held them to
I was
14
looking
points.
forward to last week's game, but oh my God, this game. I mean, I was hoping we'd play the Texans at home. That'd be great. I wanted the Arrowhead Invitational, of course.
Sure. Round 6. Yeah.
But this game, this is, we talk about the most anticipated games, Chiefs, that played in this whole time. Obviously, the first Super Bowl. I guess, I mean, I think that the second Super Bowl, but really the Bengals game, like it's short of the Super Bowl. The Bengals game is clear. The second Bengals game was clearly the most anticipated. And I think it would still be number one because we only won one Super Bowl at that point. We had obviously lost to them, and we hated them. I mean, we had lost to them before, but this one, I mean, obviously, the first, the one against the Patriots, it was incredible. We were hosting an AFC Championship game, like our first AFC Championship game, but it was so new. It was so new. There was a little bit of that, right? Like we just like whatever happens. Oh my God, this guy's for real. We have Patrick Mahomes. This is, it was the way it ended that made us like even more angry. But then we come back to next year and finish it. And if we had played the Ravens that year, it really was 14-15 Royal style. But the next year, if we had played the Ravens, who were the number one seed, I think it would have been more anticipated. Playing the Titans, it was almost like, my God, the only anticipation was if we blow this.
Yes.
We got this gift. We're playing the Titans at home. If we blow this because Derek freaking Henry, then like we have no one to blame but ourselves, and it'll be a huge missed opportunity. So I don't feel like that was as anticipated. And then you win one, then the Bills AFC Championship again. I it's an AFC Championship. It's important, but I don't feel like there was that much pressure on the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, we may have taken our eye off the ball with the Bengals the first time.
Right.
Clearly the team did at halftime. But then last year,
the lead, looking forward a little bit, that makes total sense. Yeah.
And then last year, but the last year was the most anticipated. I would put the second behind that because the Ravens team are just on paper, they are just better. Like you said, it's one of the best teams on paper in NFL history. But this is also, you're 2 games away from winning that third title, and 3 is a dynasty, and it's over. Like the dynasty. Well, hopefully. When we talk next week, it's all going to be about dynasty status, and we're 1 game away.
Right.
But you got to win. You're still 2 games away right now. So let's just focus on this game. Hopefully we'll have some guys healthy. We'll see if Joe Tooney's out there. Oh, I meant to say I had another good feeling about the game the morning of. I was on the slopes in Vail, and again I had my Patrick Mahomes jersey on, and a ski instructor just kind of called out, hey, you're ready for the game or whatever. It's kind of obvious I'm rooting for the Chiefs. But then he comes over and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I have a buddy, his son was a lineman at Illinois, and he got a call from Andy Reid in the middle of the draft, and it's like Andy's like, you want to block for Patrick Mahomes? And I look at him like, wait, is your buddy's son Nick Allegretti?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's like, yeah, Nick.
What?
I'm like, okay. I'm like, that was a pretty good sign. This of all things, a random like
that's crazy.
Because he's a Chicago kid. I had a friend who texted me the day of the draft and was like, "Who's Nick Allegretti?" I'm like, "The Chiefs just drafted him in the 5th round." He's like, "Yeah, his whole family's at this restaurant here and celebrating." So of course I didn't expect Nick Allegretti to actually have to play a quarter of the snaps because Joe Tooney
played well.
But still, it was a good sign, and he played well. He had a couple of really good plays, but obviously we need Joe Tooney. Willie Gay looks like he'll probably play. That I think is the most
practiced in full, and he said, "I'm playing on Sunday on."
And that's the one because man, we not having him to spy on Allen was a problem, and
yes, it was.
We need a spy for Lamar. So, but if he's able to play, the team is in relatively good health, and again, Patrick Mahomes has 2 working legs this year, so like the sky's the limit.
Good luck.
But man, this game is going to be this is going to be a fun one, I think.
Well, Rany, as always, we super appreciate your time. Episode 10 was just as good as the last 9. Can't wait to talk to you next week, hopefully in celebration, or I mean, even at this point, putting to bed the 2023 Chiefs is not going to be as rough of a situation as I thought we were going to face even a couple weeks ago. I mean, they've gone out, they turned the playoffs
on Christmas Day.
On Christmas Day, I didn't even think I'd ever do this podcast again, honestly. So it's been a fun ride. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you next week.
Looking forward to it.